investor allocation in the stock market is the highest in US history. And they've basically circled out of bonds. It's the most ever that this much money has been allocated to stocks versus any other asset. 52% of people's money. So households, mutual funds, pension funds, and foreign investors, asset allocation and equities just hit 52%. This is wild. The money market are paying 5.5%.
It's also when inflation is the highest that it's been in 40 years or so. The writing on the wall here is that like if you actually need a real rate of return on your money, you won't be able to get it in bonds. You won't be able to get it in money market accounts. Anand said this quite a few times on this podcast. There's only one game in the world to really get a real return these days, and it's investing in the top 25 companies in America.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is like a lot of these funds and mutual funds and pension funds are like, oh shit, we're about to have to start paying out sometime soon. We need to juice our returns. What can we do?
Cash.
Ladies and gentlemen, group chat.
Cash.
It's $1 trillion. Hot.
All right, Cathy's. Welcome back. Number one podcast in the world, group chat here. Drama's still out. He's missing. He's MIA.
Tony killed him, like you said
Killed
last
Tony.
pod. But he posted Pebble Beach.
He was golfing. So at least that was a
Proof of life.
proof of life. He was not on the helicopter in Iran.
He did post a private jet. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, great. He had a great weekend. But we have to talk about this. This is big news. I mean, CIA was very busy this weekend.
So there's a lot of theories. Let's get into it.
So the big thing is Iranian president and like basically half the cabinet or
Foreign minister.
and very important people for Iran leadership were all in a helicopter. And I saw the report that it was foggy and we know
Yeah, because of Kobe.
we know that going in a helicopter in the fog is generally not a good idea. And I assume whatever helicopter they're flying in Iran is
No, it's like Uzbekistan, right? Where was it?
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
Okay.
But I'm just saying the helicopter is
Why
owned.
were they even there?
They were doing well. That's why the foreign minister was on the helicopter as well. It's because I think that they were doing just some like catch up, foreign minister type catch up with
Recon.
Azerbaijan. Yeah,
And
And Azerbaijan's where? It's next to Ukraine?
no, I think it's next to Iran.
yeah, it's like it's in that like area between Asia and Europe.
Because Iran, I know, is a 40-minute boat ride from Dubai. So I'm trying to like picture where they were going.
Look on your phone. You could picture
Yeah,
it.
we'll look.
I don't really care where Azerbaijan is.
Because that's more
important-
like Eastern
Who
Europe.
cares? That's not the story. The story's not Azerbaijan. No one cares.
I just want to know why they were there.
Who cares? That's irrelevant at this point. The more relevant point is that these guys got up in this foggy helicopter and they died. Reportedly dead. They have not confirmed it.
Well, it's been 9 as of recording this. It's been 9 hours, and there's been nothing. They haven't found them.
Yeah.
It's been nothing.
And
So,
there's some report they got mauled by animals.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think
I don't
that's
know if
more of
that's
just that's Twitter.
Theatrics.
Yeah, I don't think that's real.
So there's so many different ways you can think about this because, you know, after the JFK assassination by the CIA, it's, you know, every theory is on the plate.
Yeah.
And one conspiracy theory I've kind of read or been told by friends, and I'm curious, Zach and Dee, if you guys give any credence to it, is so the Supreme Leader Khomeini,
yeah.
His son is supposed to be
Next in command.
but the president was also trying to be the next in command for Supreme Leader.
Yeah.
And
The
Ayatollah may have just said, hey, get in this foggy helicopter and forced them to go and got them killed.
Well,
That's
there's-
one conspiracy theory.
That's one, yeah.
The other is, did CIA just shoot it down, or was it just weather related? I don't know.
I actually, normally I'm a big conspiracy believer. I think they had a shitty helicopter. Like, I bet you they had a 50-year-old helicopter and they went up in the fog and they just made a bad decision.
I think obviously Kobe was the most important person in Los Angeles. And I feel like the helicopter pilot wanted to be a hero, and that's why they kept going, because he's, you know, when you travel with famous people or whatever, you try to like make sure they get to wherever they get to. This one's weird because you have all these important people from one country. If it's foggy, wouldn't they just say, "Hey, chill out, guys"?
You're the president of Iran. You're the pilot.
You have
the
stuff
president
to
of
do.
Iran says, "I need to get to Azerbaijan. I'm taking them to the cleaners. I need a ride. We're going." You think the president of Iran is less chill than like Kobe Bryant?
I think it's interesting that he, from what I see, that he was like also widely disliked by the Iranian population.
Yeah, they're cheering in the streets.
Yeah, and I think that that's also kind of like interesting.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around, that the population actually was favoring him, which is why Khomeini wanted him off.
No, I think that there's been like pretty big celebrations that he's,
and because, you know, this guy
They
killed
may
a lot
force
of
them to celebrate, though.
This guy also killed a lot of political prisoners
Yes.
early in his career.
Yes.
He hasn't been like some like model citizen by any stretch of the imagination. And there's a lot of like the young people in Iran, from just what I read, are looking for change. They're sick of the way the country's been run.
But the supreme leader is the agent of change, not the president.
We don't know what happens next here.
It just seems like the most obvious thing is that like mountainous region plus fog plus helicopter is probably like one of the worst equations to kind of like put yourself into.
Yeah,
I
I feel
think-
like
I
there's,
think-
there's enough precedents you don't get on the helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering if you're CIA, Mossad, do you think this is good or bad? Because if they were not prepared for it, then it's bad.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what happens next.
Right.
If you are prepared for it, then you have the ability to impact change.
I think if you're like Israel specifically, though, it's probably a good thing, because if there's like mass instability from like a government level, it kind of takes the pressure off of Israel.
Attacking.
Yeah, it's like they have other things to worry about now. And it's like if you can introduce instability in a time where they're like focusing a lot of their time and efforts on attacking Israel and like putting resources towards making that fight like a little bit more uneven, it kind of makes it so that it's like, which is why there's probably a world in which, you know, a lot of people believe that this was like a Mossad kind of thing, because now they have to figure this out before they can go back and start, you know, attacking Israel and spending a lot of time there. So
the population of Iran, I just looked it up, is 88.5 million people. I would say the vast majority probably don't agree with the Ayatollah and his beliefs. It's a massive economy.
It's a massive economy. Pre-1980, if you look at the images of Iran,
Yeah.
they were very much, it looked like a European kind of culture.
Same with Egypt.
Yeah. And so it got, because of this kind of revolution that happened, it became extremely conservative, Islamic kind of, you know.
Sharia law,
yeah. And I
which
think,
is different than just being Islamic.
yeah, but it became Islamic extremist is what happened into the country when pre-1980 it was not like that at all.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. It was a very different country, and it was a big change to the region when that happened. I mean, think about, take Los Angeles. Why do you think there's so many Persian people? They all came in like 79, 80
Yeah.
because they left their country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you look at how important that region is for stability in the world, like whatever is happening right now behind closed doors, it's some crazy shit. Like it is some movie shit happening, because if it's just an accident and these guys were not prepared for like regime change, it's like, it could be it could be the opportunity of a lifetime either way.
Yeah, that's where I struggle, because we've had foreign leaders from America travel all around the world, Secretary of State, presidents, vice presidents.
Blinken
and
was playing the guitar in Ukraine last week.
who was?
Blinken.
Was he really?
What? He was at a bar fucking jamming out after he handed out 80 billion. They probably give 80 billion. They're like, put you at Coachella of Ukraine. Go ahead. Have a blast. He was literally on guitar.
No, my point is everyone's been safe. Knock on wood, like American leaders traveling around the world.
Yeah.
They've been in every country. They're on, Marine One and Air Force One and all these.
You're talking about the best equipment in the world, though. That's the difference. People are also forgetting that, like, the helicopter that these guys were flying on could be the worst helicopter in the world, easily.
Do you think the Ayatollah just told them they have to go, and then he knew that the weather was so bad?
He was rolling the dice.
No, basically it was like
the president was on the plane, not the Ayatollah.
I know, but the Ayatollah may have just called in and said, "You guys are going."
Yeah,
because you can't. He's the guy.
Yeah, but
he makes all the calls.
Helicopter ride, he may not have any control over.
I think he does. If he just says, "You need to go to Azerbaijan now," and if you don't, you come home, you get killed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it works there.
What do you think, Zach?
Everything's
on the table, in my opinion, because we've learned that there's so much, behind closed doors stuff that goes on in every aspect of the world.
I think what's worrisome is if it does come out that there was some like foreign agency in anything that happened here, then things could get like really, really messy. And especially if it was like Israeli or even American involvement, like things could get really fucked up really quickly.
Yeah.
And so in a weird way, I kind of hope it was either like an inside thing or like just like a factor of the weather and just like unfortunate or fortunate, depending on your perspective. But like if there was some sort of foreign action here and it somehow came out, that would be really, really bad, I think.
Like, what do you think Palmer Luckey thinks?
I think that he probably would go with
let me just give context. Palmer Luckey runs Anduril. He started Oculus. Anduril is a big defense private company. Is it worth what, 10 billion, 12 billion, something like that?
12 and a half. Yeah.
12.5 billion. Has government contracts with America, Ukraine, all allies on the Western side.
He has to want that it was weather.
Yeah.
Everyone wants it. It was weather.
I know if he wants, but I'm just, he's an insider.
Yeah, I think that.
I'm not saying you talk to him, but I'm just saying, what do you think he would think?
I think that people like that always are always assume that it's deeper than like surface level. And so maybe it wasn't completely an accident. But like, it's hard to tell who the actors are. Like when you're not out there, it's like really hard to tell. But I'm sure there are people in the United States government, people at Palantir or whatever that like have a better understanding of this. But yeah, I think it's just really hard to tell unless you're like out there on the ground or like really deeply intertwined in these like intelligence networks.
Do you think Palmer Luckey and who's obviously the founder of Anduril, and then Alex Karp, who's the CEO of Palantir, know more about foreign actors than the U.S. government?
Yes, because they sell the data to the U.S. government for them to be able to make decisions based off of their data.
Blinken's playing guitar. These guys actually know what's going on?
Yeah, I think that a lot of their contracts are like, hey, we accumulate data for you and we run them through our systems and then we sell it to you sort of like packaged up in a nice little bow. And so you can like do whatever you need to do with them on your side. But they're the people, they're like sort of like the ingestion mechanism for all of this data. And so I think that they probably have very frontline knowledge of like a bunch of different things across the world that, all of these guys have like personal security details, and that's probably for a reason. So
they basically are the new CIA.
I think, yeah, I think private enterprise has always been the CIA to some extent. Like you have things like Booz Allen Hamilton, who does a lot of contracting for the NSA, and like there's these large.
Isn't that what Snowden was?
Yeah, that's where Snowden used to work.
Yeah,
there's like these types of companies that kind of like only exist in Virginia and do like a lot of contracting work for the United States government. And they're called private intelligence agencies, PIAs. And
you could tell me NFL is CIA.
What does that mean?
Why not? Greatest distraction for America.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of private enterprise that like the private enterprise is probably because like the government's so slow and cumbersome and there's a lot of red tape. Like but private companies are able to work a lot more nimbly to like acquire a lot of this stuff. And they can do it at an arm's length from the U.S. government. So there's not this political blowback if something goes wrong. So I think that there's a lot of the things that we find out come from private companies probably.
Yeah, the NFL thing is actually, now that you mention it, because Rogan talks about this all the time, that in the 60s, the hippie movement was funded by the CIA.
As a distraction.
as a to make them look crazy.
MK Ultra, yeah.
Yeah, so like give them LSD, acid, Molly. Or I don't know if Molly was back then. Whatever, ecstasy.
The CIA now gives us fantasy football. They're like, how do we keep our population occupied?
Just make sure Patrick
legalize
Mahomes
gambling,
legalize gambling, legalize
weed.
It's not a bad strategy. Because if you look at it from
it was different because the 60s, they wanted to make the anti-war protesters look crazy.
Yeah.
Because they were on drugs and they're at like Woodstock and they're like, these like free-spirited liberal people. So what's the new angle of making people look crazy?
You want to know what I think? I don't think it's actually about making people look crazy. I think it's about getting people to be so placated that they don't care at all about what's happening around them.
That's good.
I agree.
That's a good point.
Because by the way, like we're talking about this Iran thing. I think it's a very big deal, but I promise you in 99% of the homes in America, it was not brought up and no one gives a shit.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So I think and the reason why is you had PGA Championship this weekend. You had NBA playoffs. You have...
Both your teams lost.
What teams?
Knicks and Wolves. Those are your two new teams.
Says who?
So now who are you rooting for?
Don't worry about it. Once I figure out who's playing, I'll tell you. My team always wins. That's the big difference.
But anyways, keep going. By
the way, Timberwolves are up by 3. So fuck you.
They're up?
Yes.
Holy
fuck you.
shit. I can't believe we're recording this pod.
You go against Ant-Man.
They were down 20.
Yeah. Okay. So shut up.
Michael Jordan's kid.
Yeah. Michael Jordan's not going to lose.
I cannot believe this. God damn it.
There you go. CIA. That's what I just told you. We just talk about this life change, potentially generational change happening in Iran. I tell you, Ant-Man's up by 3. You don't give a shit about Iran.
That's correct.
Just proved the psyops.
Yeah. Oh my God. We may have to stop this pod and watch some of this game.
So I think the point is that like you see to Zach's point, it just played out live.
Yeah.
It literally just played out live. They're gonna the goal. By the way, as a government, I'm also a believer of like some things I don't want to know. As just a citizen.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to know how close we are to a
nuclear war,
terrorist attack, nuclear war. Like, did you see that the State Department issued a global threat for American travelers and a global threat for all LGBTQ?
Yeah.
Q. I forgot the Q.
I didn't know I saw the LGBTQ. I didn't see the American travelers.
I think it was global, just like American, I think.
Like if you're American, but if you go on the CIA's website and look at every country, you can't go anywhere.
Well, you know what, like you saw what Donald Trump said about the JFK stuff, right?
What did he say?
He was like, if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't say anything either. Like because like he was supposed to release the JFK files,
and then he realized,
then he pushed it off.
Yeah,
and I think
because even he knows this shit is so crazy.
Yeah, and so I think that like people are very easily riled up when it comes to things like this.
Yeah, and I think and the problem is like you're seeing it now with, now we know the Wuhan lab was actually funded by American dollars, right?
But we've known that for years.
No. But if you look,
I've been saying, I got convinced like 3 years ago.
Here's the thing is we on this podcast, we're very pro-vaccination, pro that, against China, all this shit. Now you come to find that basically if you can put the dots together, we funded this lab. The stupid thing leaked out of that lab. It was our fault. And then a bunch of pharmaceutical companies made hundreds of billions of dollars injecting us with a vaccine, right?
So I know the news came out, but I think probably a year after, I would say within 6 months after COVID broke out, it was pretty clear that gain of function research funded the lab, and it just wasn't appropriate to talk about in mainstream media. Because I keep saying Rogan, but he was the first person I heard bring it up.
Yeah, and he was vilified for it.
No, he was vilified for taking ivermectin.
Which is now the right thing to have taken, right? Which we all joked about.
There were also a bunch of people who were like getting banned off YouTube and, like having all of their socials.
People got fired.
Yeah.
People got lost their jobs.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think if you are willing to expose yourself to multiple different opinions, you can actually get smart on the world.
But you can't. Everyone's groupthink, right? Like
No, the fact that I'm willing to listen to Aaron Rodgers and Tucker Carlson, which is like political
but you're
beliefs.
listening, but you're not like changing your decisions, because if today was the election, you would vote for Joe Biden.
100%.
Yeah. So
Doesn't mean I have to change, but I'm willing to listen.
yeah.
I don't think most people are willing to listen, is my point. Either side.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I think 90% don't listen, and the 10% are like the independents that swing the election.
Yeah. No, but I think the larger point is basically there's a lot of information now because of internet, podcasts, YouTube, X, Twitter, that you can actually kind of form your own opinion on different things. You just can't be lazy about it.
I don't think it's about being lazy. I think it's because
it's easy just to listen to Rachel Maddow and say
it's attacking. People attack. That's the problem. It's not about lazy. People want to have an independent thing. Think about it like this. Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Chiefs.
Yep.
Did what he say, is it wrong? Listen. I got to finish my thought.
Because I listened to the whole speech.
I know. Okay. What he said, it's his belief.
Sure.
It's what he wants. The same way we listen to a trans activist speak on what they believe is the right way. Same way we listen to a DEI expert believe what they believe it is. Everyone is allowed to their own beliefs. But in America, if we, as the masses, don't agree with your opinion, we fucking destroy you. And that's why Harrison Butker's jersey is number one. Yeah. It's why the owner of the Chiefs doubled down on Harrison Butker.
The daughter of the Chiefs.
The daughter of the Chiefs, right? And so what that's telling you is that you're allowed to give your opinion as long as it's not against what the masses think.
But it appears that the masses... So I think the pendulum is massively shifted.
Yeah.
Right? The Harrison Butker thing is like a pretty good signal.
Yeah, everyone's like, cut him. He's going to be the most popular player in the NFL this year.
And look, I don't agree with what he said, but the public has spoken.
Yeah.
And the public has spoken.
As long as you can accept it, that when he comes out on the field, he kicks the game-winning field goal, and you're on the Chiefs, -3. You hit your part. You're happy. The thing is like the opposite. The thing with like when the Kaepernick thing happened, when people said, "I'm not watching the NFL because of Kaepernick." That's so stupid to me.
Yeah,
like that's a game you love, and one person's affecting the way you think about it. Same way, Harrison Butker, whatever, who gives a shit what he said. You're gonna just stop watching. I just think
I don't think anyone's gonna stop watching. Obviously, ratings
definitely not
bigger than
Harrison
ever.
Butker.
Yeah, I mean he's actually like. In the large scheme of the NFL, a nobody. I know he's a good kicker, but like...
I mean, he's like... But now he's somebody.
Yeah, now he's like known.
Yeah.
And do you think Taylor Swift lets Kelsey have dinner with them?
They were never friends to begin with, so I don't think that's a fair thing.
I think like context is also really important here too. It's like Harrison Butker said that at like a really religious Catholic university.
Conservative Catholic
And so
university.
like he was speaking to his audience.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about social media and stuff is like it expands your words so far past your intended audience. And this is the thing with like Joe Rogan, right? It's like people who are diehard fans of Joe Rogan will listen to Joe Rogan say whatever he has to say and really like buy into whatever he has to say. But as soon as it like trickles into Twitter or Instagram and it hits this wider audience, that's when it starts getting like weaponized and like becomes this like really high friction point.
And by the way, just to lean in on that, I am extremely sensitive to what clips from this podcast get cut and put out, because I'm very comfortable talking anything to this audience.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy's. I am not comfortable with the internet.
Yeah, like
And
if we go viral on a clip and you say something and then
it gets taken out of context and my life gets ruined, I can't afford that. So, but I'm very comfortable with our world of Kathy's, that what I speak, I know that is taken in context.
Yeah, context is really important in all this stuff. And
yeah.
And you actually have to listen to the full conversation with most things. Like,
yeah,
I think the thing with a lot of these podcasts that are like so big, they get clipped. And
but the person clipping it is purposely clipping it
And the
so
most,
that
like,
they get more
salacious.
engagement.
Yeah.
They're not clipping it for the purposes of getting the message across or hurting them or even helping them. Does not matter.
Yeah.
It's just about
engagement.
Engagement. It's engagement farming at its best. And that ultimately is the big problem. So like that. So in the case of like what's happening in Iran, and especially on the ground in Iran, I'm very curious the messaging from the state government.
Because it's state-controlled media.
Yeah.
So the government is feeding the information. I would be very curious if someone in Iran listens to this pod. I don't know if we're even.
Well, one of our best friends has family there, so
That's
we
true.
can ask him.
What's being fed to them.
Yeah. I think the young people in Iran are very hip to not getting their information from them.
Yeah.
Because, they think about
It's
all
more
the things that have
progressive.
happened in the last 5 years in Iran with all the protests and basically.
They have VPNs. They can get on all these different. platforms.
I'm pretty confident that they're getting their information from objective sources, despite what's being said.
I'm just surprised with. It's a very vibrant business minded culture.
Yeah.
Iran, that they haven't had their MBS. That basically is okay. Obviously, MBS has a lot of flaws and has done a lot of terrible things, but he's transformed the country.
Oh yeah.
He's also a lot younger, right? So it's you need to. Ayatollah's, I don't know how old, but
He's old.
Yeah. So I think you kind of have to wait for these generations to die off before you get the chance to.
Or have a foggy day.
Yeah.
Well,
foggy.
technically, MBS's dad is still the king.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he's been pretty much.
Yeah.
He's given all of his power to his son, and I just think you need these transitions of power, which maybe this changes it, right? Maybe the young guy comes in, Ayatollah's son, and there's a shift in that way, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, Iran has the ability to be an incredible, vibrant culture, community, economy, overnight.
And it's in the benefit of Western countries because
Well, that's why they don't want to do it, because it is a benefit of the Western countries.
the Western countries, if Iran becomes kind of an ally to Western countries, then Russia's less important to them. They don't rely on,
Putin's having an emergency meeting.
I believe so. I would believe it.
Yeah.
Because
He's like, we better find a guy that looks like this guy, throw his ass back in there.
because of, it's Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, these kind of pariahs in the global foreign policy are all in cahoots. But if Iran, it's okay, America, Western Europe, we're willing to play ball and not be a violent actor, it'll diminish those countries.
Yeah.
Because trade will stop.
It'll also settle down the Middle East a lot. I think if Iran was aligned with like Saudi and all of our other allies in the Middle East, like
Oh yeah, if Iran, Emiratis, Saudis all were together, oh my
if they were on
god.
the same page, like we would that to me is like actually one of the big benefits that could come out of something like this is that if I think that like Saudi and all these other Middle Eastern countries look at Iran as kind of like this weird like hermit country that's not like very progressive, and so they tend to have kind of a lot of friction there, and if that changes, I think that a lot of the tensions that we constantly worry about in the Middle East kind of go away overnight.
Yeah. All right, moving on to another bizarre thing that happened today. So I'm scrolling through X. I thought it was fake. I didn't believe it. Next thing you know, 5,000 accounts post it. There was a failed coup attempt in Congo, and it looked like these 3 Americans were like literally surrounded by
I have a lot to say about this one.
Congans.
Yeah.
And it, everyone assumes it's CIA, but one of these idiots had a passport on him.
Yeah, so
I just feel like that's like day one in training. Hey,
yeah.
you cannot just have your passport on you.
I've talked to some people in the intelligence community today, and they said basically the number one thing that gives this away as not CIA action is the fact that these guys were like all very easily identifiable. And so
Could they just be mercenaries that kind of fucked up?
I think that that's what I think that the story that I've read that seems to be the most plausible is that there's actually a Congolese guy in the United States that put these guys up to, and I think that he was actually, he was living in the United States, but he was killed in this raid on the presidential palace or whatever they were trying to do. And it seems like one of these things, I don't know if you remember this, but there's like one of these that happened in Haiti not too long ago where they tried to attack the presidential palace in Haiti, and it was a bunch of like Colombians that it was like a group in Miami put like all these Colombians up to it. And so I think like And this is like a world that I've been learning a lot more about recently. Like there's all of these different companies that you can hire to do different things. And it's such a legal gray area. It's like you can hire these people from this country to do this one thing. And even though you're in the United States, if they're
these people do it, it's okay.
If their company's based out there and these people are all citizens of this country,
It's like
they can
Blackwater shit.
Yeah, so it's like all private military contracting, which kind of like it's an insanely legal gray area. And so what I think that this is, and a lot of it pays really well. Like some of these guys are earning like $2,000, $3,000 a day to do this kind of thing, and they're all from special forces units around the world. And
yeah, I mean, I know someone that listened to this pod that's from Australia that I met in LA at Run Club. And he worked in Afghanistan 3 to 6 months a year as a private military person and went home.
Yeah.
So
And he got paid bank.
yeah,
So is the running theory is that some opposite faction of the government basically hired some like ex-military forces to...
How did these guys have their passport?
that's pretty.
I mean, what are you, just idiots? Or is this a distraction? They gave some bullshit names.
Well, Democratic Republic of the Congo right now, it's kind of interesting. It's like one of the places where like this sort of soft war of like powers is kind of fighting. There's a lot of like Chinese involvement with Belt and Road. Wagner Group is pretty active in Congo. And it's because Congo is like one of
Didn't the dude die?
Who?
Wagner.
Prigozhin? Yeah, but they're still super active, and they're actually one of them. They'll probably do a couple $2 billion a year just from contracts in Africa. And the way they do it is actually really interesting. We could dive into that if you want.
Africa's crazy what's going on.
What's really interesting is the way that like people like Wagner do it is like so say like the terrorists take over like a mine or something, right? And now it's the terrorist mine or like an oil and gas pump or whatever. And Wagner will come in and say, hey, we'll go to the Congolese government and say, hey, we'll win back your natural resource for you, but now we take 25% of the gross forever, or for like 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's how they make their money.
They do rev share.
Yeah, they do rev share by like defeating terrorists. It's pretty crazy. But
Natural resources rev share by taking care of terrorists.
yeah, but like Congo is like one of the what I found interesting about this is like Congo is one of these places where there's a variety of different world powers. I think that there's a ton of cobalt in Congo. There's a ton of lithium. Like a lot of these like really important rare earth minerals are in Congo. And
obviously, I mean, Africa, think about it from a rare earth and a natural.
I mean, that's the iPhone, right? It's all lithium.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's anything with a battery. Yeah.
I mean, think about the natural resources in that continent. It's insane. It's probably one of the most valuable places on earth.
And it's one of the most unstable, right?
Yeah.
That's what China's chess move was, right? They invested, tens and tens of billions of dollars in all these different African countries to basically, you have to play ball with them.
Well, it's not, what's even more intelligent of them is that it's not investments. They forced their debt on these countries. And so now China, these people are taking massive debt from China to basically build roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, whatever. And, if the countries stay unstable and they default on their debt, who now owns the majority of the assets in that country and can do, a lot more with them. And so I think what's actually happening in Africa is like one of these things that it's not really focused on in the West very much, but I think it has like insane implications because if we lose and it like this is kind of a contrarian perspective that I have, but I think that the US actually should probably be doing much more in Africa in a proactive way in the way that China's doing it, because otherwise we become a net importer of Chinese minerals and all these things. And it's one of those things where it's like, remember when COVID was happening and like a lot of the precursors for the drugs that we needed were all coming from China.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, fuck. Like now we're kind of like stuck in the back pocket of these people. I think something very similar could happen with a lot of the natural resources that we consume on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so I have this perspective that we actually need to be doing a lot more in Africa, but it's not a very popular point of view just because like people talk about colonialism and all these different things, but it's I've been spending a lot of time learning about what's going on in Africa, and it is extremely fucked up, like all across the board.
Yeah.
And we are losing like a very key aspect of our global power by letting it happen. So
No, I totally agree with you. And our guy's playing the guitar in Ukraine. That's an issue.
Blinken.
Yeah.
He has no idea what's going on in Africa. Zero.
Yeah, I think just from a pure, like what you just said, natural resources, it's silly that we aren't, like, Blinken should be there. He shouldn't be in Ukraine helping Zelensky and his boys siphon money.
Yeah, and we can do it in like a structured way that's not fucked up. Like the way that the Chinese and the Russians are doing it, it's really fucked up.
I see these crazy videos of these Chinese factory owners
like beating Africans.
Beating the shit
They're
out of
doing it in a
Africans.
really fucked up way. And I think that like there's a way that you can execute this in like a capitalistic fashion, but is still like done in a fairly respectable manner.
Do you think the problem is the leadership in many of the countries in third world, all third world, it's just corruption, and American business just doesn't know how to operate within them?
No, I think Americans are super corrupt. I think that there's corruption in our own society,
Of course,
at a very deep level. I think the problem is the social blowback. I think that there's such like a negative connotation around
America
like,
goes to Africa.
It's like a
reverse slavery kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like like round two of like the sort of slavery perspective where it's like, oh, we're going to this foreign country, we're taking these resources from them, we're like enacting our version of capitalism on societies that have never really necessarily asked for it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's probably like a lot of structure and benefit from both sides if you were to be able to go in there and say, hey, we're going to set up legitimate companies here. We're going to pay people fair wages. We're going to get the things that we need, and we're going to give you the things that you need. And hopefully that ends up in a positive sort of manner. But it's in the way that it's being executed right now, it's pretty fucked up. But that's kind of a long way of saying, like, I think that one of these sort of like powers is behind sort of this Congo overthrow, where it's like, we need something in Congo. The government's not giving it to us. We can hire people to just destabilize this government. And yeah.
So I know you talk to a lot of people in defense and intelligence. What's one interesting thing you can share that you won't get in trouble for?
Just about what?
Just in general, how the world works.
Yeah, I think that like,
because we all know there's shadow governments everywhere. There's shadow people.
What's your favorite shadow government?
yeah, I think that like, I mean, and maybe this is not, maybe it's well known, but it's probably not just talked about that much. It's just like, I don't think that people are very aware. Like you know that your data is getting taken, but I don't think that people are aware just how much of like a specific file is built on you within the government. And like they have like people complain about China having like a social credit score. Like your own version of a social credit score exists in this country.
In America.
They know how many tickets you've gotten. They know how many times you've defaulted on debt. They know, and that's all put together into a picture. And they don't necessarily use it against you at this point in time.
But if they need to,
at a certain point, they could, right?
Have they used? But they haven't used it in a court case, right? If you're
but there's other ways to put pressure.
Like, give me an example of where it's been used. What?
Diddy got away with his horrific behavior for decades, and all of a sudden now,
but he's still not charged.
His life is over. They chose the file manager of the credit score, the person said, you know what, we're done with you. They probably he didn't play ball on something.
Yeah, there's so many conspiracy
you could
theories.
release that fucking tape 10 years ago.
Well, they claim that they found it in the raid.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
I think that what you'll find is
not
like
in the cloud. What is this cloud everyone always talks about?
Oh, I think you'll find like a lot of people in politics.
CoreWeave raised $7.5 billion.
Yeah, like 20 billion or something. Yeah,
your favorite company. But whatever. Sorry, keep going, Zach.
No. What I'm saying is like I think that you'll probably find that this happens like a lot in politics and is not very much talked about. Where it's like, hey, we know you've done X, Y, and Z. Like, maybe just don't like do this thing. Because
but do you think it only happens at this point at the most elite levels?
Yes.
Right?
So I think that there's like a lot of blackmail that happens that like is not often talked about.
Normal citizens like the three of us, we have no worries.
Yeah, we don't have any worries. But like the second that you start to get in power, like there's so many people who've done so much fucked up shit. And it's like, how do you stay in line? Well, we know this, and this about you. We have...
Yeah. People underestimate like that the most powerful thing in the world is information.
And that's what Edward Snowden was saying, right? He's like, my job was to purposefully spy on American citizens and collect as much information as I could, look through all of their things, and they said it was under the guise of preventing terrorism, which to some extent I believe it probably is. But
then when you realize that you could also
do it.
By
for
the way,
anything.
you know what? I don't like what Anand's. You know what? I don't like Anand's new investment in Core Weave.
I didn't invest in Core
Okay,
Weave.
but let's just say they didn't like it.
I wish I did.
And they say, you know what? We need him to sell his position, and we need him to renounce.
But they're only doing it at the highest levels, right?
Yeah, but it wouldn't make sense for them to do it at the lowest because there's the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like if you're going to do that on some random guy who works at Starbucks, you're not going to get anything out of it. But if you're doing it with somebody who like controls a random voting district in a swing state, for instance, then all of a sudden.
So do you think that the data is obviously being collected? I completely agree with that. There's no question about it. Snowden released this 10 years ago. But I'm just curious if it's being used against people other than the most elite.
I think it's being used against business people.
Like, sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
no.
You know when you see politicians say and do the dumbest shit ever? They just why they didn't vote for something, or why they didn't back something, or why didn't they do, like we see it all the time. Just take politicians because it's easy and everyone knows what politicians do. It's pretty easy to manipulate them when you have information about them.
But how does Rogan get away with what he's saying? He's the biggest platform.
How do you know he's not being manipulated to say what he's saying?
I mean, he's countering pretty much everything that the U.S. government's doing.
I think that the people who have their own their own businesses and their own platforms and have built them themselves are the most insulated from this. I think it's when you rely on these like structured systems, like, NBC. The financial system or the government, like working in the government or whatever. When somebody else is like paying you your money, you kind of are less insulated from this because you're like, oh fuck, I have a mortgage, I have kids, I have all of these things. Yeah. I need to keep this gravy train rolling. Yeah. Versus somebody like Rogan, where it's like, as long as YouTube exists, I will be getting paid.
I understand, but in terms of, we talk about Diddy, they got, obviously
Diddy was sloppy. He was a bad guy. Joe Rogan might be a good guy.
Well, did you see what Candace Owens said about Diddy?
What?
Candace Owens has
she thinks he's CIA.
He thinks he's an FBI, CIA informant, which I increasingly also think.
Okay. I believe it too.
Because there's
in
enough.
What sense?
I think that there's enough evidence about. Dude, there's so much.
This guy's done so much fucked up shit.
Of course.
And there's also so much like crime, like there's so much crime actually associated with rap, especially in like the 90s and the 2000s when he was coming up.
Yeah, of course.
Like. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to say, hey, Diddy, we know X, Y, and Z about you. If you don't want to go to jail for 20 years, tell us who's using your record label as a drug front, who's, like murdering people to further their own interests within the music industry, who's doing all of this shit.
Yeah.
It's not the craziest thing in the world.
And you get to, dance at the Grammys.
And you get to have your freak offs.
And your Met Gala.
And then he took advantage of it.
And he went crazy.
He went too far.
He went crazy.
He thought he was like too untouchable.
He was untouchable. He's like, I got the CIA and the FBI behind me.
I increasingly think that's.
I'm not mad at the theory.
Yeah,
because he's clearly gotten away with.
He's not in jail right now. That's the craziest part.
He's not charged.
Yeah,
and they said that the city of LA
said they can't charge him.
Statute of limitations can't do it.
And you saw the video he posted.
Yeah,
or he didn't post it. It leaked. It leaked from the one today.
The apology video,
which looks like the same background as Russell Simmons.
And they said it's
his house in Miami.
No, they said it's a non-extraditionable territory.
Yeah,
because it's like a he's
it's called Epstein's Island. That's what it is.
But that back to the point of who are they trying to influence with all the shit that they collect about you? It's like it's the same reason that like Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for trafficking underage women, but none of the people she was trafficking them to have ever been charged with a single thing.
Because it's in everyone's best interest.
Because it's in everyone's best interest to just be like, shut the fuck up and be like, okay.
Yeah. They know who she trafficked.
What's the FBI and CIA doing then?
No, this is, or you're saying maybe they did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, they're acting in the best interest of all of the actors that they want to keep safe.
Safe. To be like, okay.
Bill Gates.
The problem is
Bill Clinton.
Epstein was not, if you were to go super tinfoil, Epstein was never supposed to be discovered. Because it was in the best interest.
Random Miami reporter.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reporter unfortunately blew the whistle, or fortunately blew the whistle. But unfortunately for the people that wanted to keep this charade going, it has some of the most powerful men on earth.
And no one's gotten in trouble.
Not a single person.
Exactly.
And Leon Black, the founder of Apollo, is probably worth $10 billion.
Yeah. Lee Wexner.
Yeah. What's Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, he's a billionaire.
There's all this quid pro quo happening that I think that like, and it's literally, it's like, hey, we know this about you. Now you're in our back pocket. You know, anytime we need to call up Apollo to just do a little something here or there for us.
Go
You're buying
fund
these
this
railroads
defense.
and-
Yeah.
Fund this defense company. Fund this.
Buy a bunch of government bonds, buy a bunch of government bonds or whatever.
Buy
any of the-
treasuries or whatever. Yeah, because like it's so funny that the DI woman from Facebook,
Then just went and did it in Nike.
and she stole $5 million. That's a crime.
Yeah.
Clearly a crime.
Yeah.
She got 5 years.
Yeah.
All these people were banging
What about
underage
Nancy
girls.
Pelosi's attacker? Got 30 years. Her husband's attacker.
Yeah.
30 years. Do you know how much attacking is happening in San Francisco?
To get 30 years in San Francisco is hard.
It's fucking nuts.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's literally fucking nuts. The shit I've seen in that city. And that guy got 30 years?
You gotta do some crazy shit.
If
to
I
do.
walked out of this office and got the shit beaten out of me, that guy's
Nothing.
released.
What do you mean someone walked into your house? Nothing happened to him. He could have punched you in the face. Nothing would have happened.
Correct.
This guy got 30 years. 30 years.
It's like when you really start to pay attention to this shit and like really look at it, like why is this happening, but this is not happening?
Yeah,
No, 'cause,
exactly.
like the DI lady, like clearly a crime, should definitely be punished. No question. CZ, who's probably stolen like $60 billion from
He's here
depositors,
3 weeks.
4 months,
Yeah.
out in 2.
Yeah. He's out. It's
He
time
might
served.
already be out.
Time served. That's what I'm saying. But Nancy Pelosi's husband's
But they
attacker.
took down SBF.
They smashed that dildo on his head and took 30 years.
SBF, everyone's getting their money back.
Everyone got, they probably got more.
No, they're
No, they
doing
capped
capped
it.
it. They
capped
capped
it.
it.
No, they priced it at the 16K.
Someone made the
Bitcoin.
money then.
Yeah.
FTX gets the money then.
I think the government make the spread.
No, I think the bankruptcy court or whatever.
Well, I mean, the lawyers are owed like tens of millions of dollars. There's
Yeah.
like a bunch of shit around it. But
But
yeah,
it's interesting who they decide to go after and who they don't.
They can't control you.
that's what I'm saying. There's like all of these, like, this is what I'm talking about, where it's like they have all of this information about you. And when they need to leverage it against you, they know the exact way to do it so that you continue to play the game that they want you to.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Which
curious
sounds
about.
crazy. Like 5 years ago, I would have been like, this is like some Alex Jones. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the more I spend time on this shit and the more I learn about it,
It makes sense.
I mean, I just
It's insane.
named 3 cases, which all are very serious crimes, and the punishments are so different.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Nancy Pelosi's attacker is going to serve more time than SBF.
No, SPF's done. He's 30, 40 years. He's not getting out early.
I don't know.
Ghislaine Maxwell will be rot in jail for the rest of her life, and not a single person she
That
ever
actually-
interacted with will get a day in jail. That's
Yeah.
the craziest thing of all
That
time.
day in jail. They wouldn't even get a fucking. There wouldn't even be a civil suit.
Yeah, their names won't even get released.
No.
And we know the names. Like, a lot of the names have been released.
Yeah, but like not as a function of the government saying
No.
this is.
It's just because of reporting.
Yeah,
So, okay, let's walk through the Leon Black example. So, founder of Apollo, worth billions and billions of dollars. He's clearly participated in Epstein Island. Like, there's no question. It's been like fully documented by reporters.
No. The only thing that's documented that he was there.
on the flights. Yeah,
Yeah. The problem is we don't know what, it's just all assumption as far as if you're just like a objective person, you can't say that he participated in anything. You don't have
Wait,
proof.
You don't have proof.
Whereas like Diddy, you have proof.
But wouldn't
He beat-
Epstein, isn't his whole point that he was blackmailing all these people? Wouldn't he have videos on all these guys with young girls to prove to them that, hey, you have to keep my money train rolling?
In the case that he did, who do you think has those videos now?
The government?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't want to be that conspiratorial, but like
Yeah.
if Diddy had all these videos, and they don't anymore, where are they?
All right, we're gonna move on.
yeah.
Let's move on. That because we're gonna go down a dark path. Well, first and foremost, the Timberwolves are gonna win, so fuck you. And fuck the CIA for trying to let the Nuggets win.
Yeah.
If the Timberwolves win, this
They
is
won.
like,
It's over.
oh yeah, they're up.
Yeah, it's 7 points. With
How
20 seconds
I
left.
can't believe I fucking missed this. This goddamn podcast. You Kathy's, you better enjoy this goddamn podcast. This is the only thing I care about.
So we're gonna move. Yeah, because they got you.
They got me. The CIA got me.
They got you.
They told me stop worrying about Iran. Go back to the NBA.
Ant-Man. The Ant-Man's gonna win the whole thing because of this. Because the gift he gave for distracting everyone. All right, so a couple quick topics I want to get through before we end the episode. First is this: there's an article that came out showing investor allocation in the stock market is the highest in U.S. history, and they've basically circled out of bonds. It's the most ever that this much money has been allocated to stocks versus any other asset. So 52%. Of people's money. Well, this is just, So households, mutual funds, pension funds, and foreign investors, asset allocation and equities just hit 52%. This is wild. The money market are paying 5.5%.
Yeah.
Which is the safest fucking money in the world.
But it's also when inflation is the highest that it's been in 40 years or so. So I think if you need, I think that the writing on the wall here is that if you actually need a real rate of return on your money, which a lot of these funds actually do, you won't be able to get it in bonds. You won't be able to get it in money market accounts. Anand said this quite a few times on this podcast. There's only one game in the world to really get a real return these days, and it's investing in the top 25 companies in America.
Yeah.
It's not even the S&P 500. It's really just the top
S&P
25.
10.
Yeah, S&P 25 maybe if you're lucky. And so I think what's happening is a lot of these funds and mutual funds and pension funds are like, oh shit, we're about to have to start paying out sometime soon. We need to juice our returns. What can we do?
So when our parents, our dad retired, I set them up with like a money manager for their retirement fund. And at the start, it was 70-30 bonds to stocks.
70% bonds.
70% bonds, 30% stock. They were just like, look, you
Just preserve your wealth.
preserve your wealth. We're at like 55-45 now.
And mom's older,
Yeah.
which makes, which would be opposite.
Yeah.
Meaning you should just preserve it even more. But
And with bonds that you can actually get real return at.
yeah.
And I think we started in 2008, 2009, something like that. And they're like, don't play the stock market. Don't worry about, trying to compound your wealth. Just get a steady, do municipal bonds, tax-free, get like a steady income.
I mean,
That's all
imagine
out
if
the
they were
window.
70-30 the other way. They'd double.
Yes,
Easy.
absolutely. Would it 2009?
Yeah.
Maybe triple.
Yeah. Not a good money manager, huh?
It's a good point. But whatever, our mom's fine.
Yeah,
but
yeah. They
it's just
don't care about money, so they're fine. But put it like this. It's really interesting. If you're 24 years old today and you got your first job 2 years ago, maybe you got $3,000 of extra money in your bank account and you want to start investing it, right? Because I get this message all the time. The right thing just seems like just to keep betting on the S&P 500, because even if next year is horrible,
max is 15% down.
I mean, it did have more in 22, right?
No, it's probably around that.
That was okay. So
You're not going to zero.
Yeah, you're not going to zero.
And if you do, there's way bigger problems you have.
Yeah, that means the world collapsed.
And the good thing about the S&P 500, because it gets reweighted constantly, you have these big cap companies that basically drive the S&P 500. It's Apple, it's Microsoft, it's Nvidia. Those are the companies of the moment. 5 years from now, it'll be something else.
Yeah. But you're betting on American exceptionalism, basically.
Yeah.
You're betting on the fact that America will continue to make great companies. And because of the reweighting, you'll always have exposure to the best ones.
So
So
what's interesting, you say that because just more of a sidebar, but I was reading a Twitter post that basically was saying how someone that just came from China and they were saying how much harder the average person works there and how much more efficient, like all this shit, right? Saying basically Chinese workers are better than American workers. But, and I agree with that. I think if you took the average person, they probably work a lot harder. But if you took America's best versus China's best, I think it's incomparable.
I agree with that.
They're not even on the same planet.
And I think that the reason that you see people working much harder in China is because they're actually fighting against regulatory friction in the way that Americans aren't.
Yeah.
Like they have to do so much more
just to make it to par.
Just to make it to par because they're fighting against communism.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I think that that's one of the great parts about democracy is that it allows people to work smarter versus having to just kind of like hustle their way against insane headwinds to be able to get to.
Yeah, I was.
So Jack, you're an investor. You invest in the riskier asset class, being venture. If you were older, or forget it, let's say you were not in venture and you had cash, you had to invest it. You couldn't keep it in cash. What would you do?
S&P 500. I think that like me personally, I would probably play the market a little bit more because I'm somebody who's willing to kind of like look at quarterly earning reports.
But you're also younger, don't have kids.
Yeah.
And like you can be riskier.
I can be riskier for sure. But like for people who don't want to make it their job, where it's like they're spending tens of hours a week.
ETF, S&P 500.
It's the easiest thing in the world. And you're basically just betting on the fact that America will keep winning. And
you know what's interesting? I was reading about, I forgot who it was. It was someone very well known. Oh, what's Tony Robbins? I think it was Tony Robbins. He was talking about 401k fees that most Americans don't know how much fees they pay in their 401ks. Some people pay 1%, some people pay 2%. But over a 30-year horizon, if you pay 2% versus 1%, the difference is humongous. Yeah. And so it's an opportunity where like, do you need to do all that shit? Just put in the S&P 500 ETF. Don't pay whatever minimal fees.
So the Vanguard S&P 500 is like the lowest in the country, I think. And expense ratio is like 30 basis points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it brings back to the point where I've said this a million times. Iran president dying, conflict in the Middle East, conflict in Eastern Europe with Russia and Ukraine, conflict everywhere. There's only one place at scale you can put your money. It's goddamn USA.
Harrison Butker's USA.
No, he's conservative Catholic. No, but like you can't put, if you're a $1 trillion asset manager, where else can you put your money?
If you're a $1 billion asset manager, where are you putting? I mean, think about, I personally know Chinese funds who have come to me and said, we're not investing in China. We're investing in America. What's going on there? European fund
and when
managers?
I say that U.S. stock market, because like Alibaba's ripped, Tencent's ripped, like all these companies, but the U.S. stock market.
I think even from a startup equation, right? Like I think there's enormous opportunity in South America. I think there's enormous opportunity in India. I think there's enormous opportunity in Southeast Asia. But if I was a VC.
Well, you can't control corruption in those parts.
No, but like if you just look at just pure return.
You just can't compete against the talent out here because one of the greatest things that America does is it brings the smartest, most entrepreneurial and excellent people in that way to this country to build things.
Yeah.
That's like one of since people were arriving at fucking Ellis Island, that has been the case. It's just bringing the most entrepreneurial people in the world to one centralized location to work on the hardest problems.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like, if you abstract it down to the most simple form, I think that that's the trend that's going to continue, which is why just investing in America, I think, is probably your best bet. And S&P 500 is the best, cheapest exposure you can get to that without having to do too much work.
Is nothing.
Yeah.
At 30 basis points, nothing.
To get basically,
you get to index the
90% of fund managers.
You get to index actually kind of the global economy because there are international companies that are in
and
S&P.
if they suck, they kick them out.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. That's the like the genius of that fund, that index. It's better than any. I mean, look, NASDAQ 100 probably outperformed everything, but it's so heavily tech that it's a risk, in terms of.
It's a high variance, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, like, we're going to see other industries explode in the next decade that S&P 500 has exposure to that we can't predict.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. All right, let's move into a couple quick things. Figma. Figma is like a darling startup that had an offer from Adobe for what, 20 billion?
Hmm.
Figma is basically the way easier version of Photoshop, to keep it simple. And
It's like the more collaborative version. Yeah.
collaborative version. And, you know, when it was all said and done, the good old FTC shot the deal down.
Lena Khan.
Lena Khan shot it down and said
It's fucking insane.
antitrust.
Yeah.
And now that it got announced this week that Figma is allowing up to $900 million worth of stock to be sold at a $12.5 billion valuation. And it looks like Andreessen Horowitz, Kleiner Perkins, and Sequoia are basically cashing out some of these employees and early investors, which is a big discount from 20.
Yeah.
Huge discount, 40%.
Yeah, it's interesting because when something like that announces and you're the founder, CEO, or the employee, you think it's done.
The 20 billion?
Yeah, the 20 billion.
Oh, yeah. You're looking at houses.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'll take that small country, like whatever.
And
20 billion.
I know
crazy.
someone who went on a walk with the CEO of Figma, and he was just like, it was just too much money. I have to take it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the founder of Figma decently well. It's a guy named Dylan Field.
Yeah.
He's a young guy. He's like 35, maybe less. He's made a fair amount of money this whole way up.
Secondaries.
And with secondaries, and he's like a really prolific angel investor. He's invested in like a bunch of the really big, really well done companies in Silicon Valley. So I don't think that like money for him is like that big of a focal point. I think the one thing to focus on here is that like this was a really important asset to Adobe specifically, because they knew that it was eating up a lot of their market share from their core product.
The next generation of people are building their business on
Figma, and they're not on Illustrator or Photoshop, or less so, right? And so, and I think that what Adobe really needed Figma for was Figma has a really, really strong enterprise business for design teams within companies, within large enterprise companies. They do all of their website design, all of their assets, all of it's done collaboratively in Figma. And so Adobe's enterprise side of their business is not that. Adobe sells in large part to like small and medium sized businesses who are like individual or collectives of graphic designers who like will make a bunch of shit and then sell it off, right? They didn't have an enterprise side of their business. So I think that Figma specifically, I think 20 billion was inflated because it was a very specifically useful asset to Adobe that not only protects their market share, but allows them to build this enterprise side of their business.
Yeah. It's a really big deal. And it's also, I think a bigger problem for me is that all of these incredible businesses are being built, and in America and in Europe, they cannot be monetized. And so they either have to go public, which is fine, but going public is not easy.
Yep.
The amount of work, the effort that it takes to go public in America is incredibly difficult. And I think it's really bad that all of these incredible businesses that could be sold in America are all getting shut down.
Yep.
Like, what was the dumbass robot thing? What was it?
iRobot from Amazon. It was a $2 billion, $1.5 billion.
And then like Blizzard Activision was the other one, right?
Yeah.
That was 75 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference.
But I mean, iRobot.
Yeah, that's stupid.
What is iRobot?
It's the
Fucking
Roomba.
vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, the
It's the
Roomba.
Roomba.
Who gives a fuck?
But why can't Amazon own that? Is crazy. Yeah.
Did revenue numbers leak on Figma? I didn't see.
I don't think so. But what I do want to point out is that there was a $1 billion breakup fee.
Yeah.
So
it's like kind of like an equity investment almost.
Why didn't they use that?
No, not
Yeah,
dilutive.
yeah.
Meaning like at least they got
Cash.
$1 billion of cash.
Why didn't Figma just use that $1 billion to just pay off these people? Why did they have to go get outside capital?
Because they're probably burning a shitload of money.
And because I think that Figma's 10-year-old company at this point. I think that they started fundraising in like
people
2012.
want liquidity.
There's people who have been working there for 10 years and they just like haven't, and they thought this was their big windfall.
Yeah.
They probably started getting, started doing their marriages, getting houses, doing all this shit. And like,
And they're like, there's no money here.
and then
And
they got
now
fucked
it's
out of it, yeah.
basically IPO. You're waiting for that, which is
And if their private valuation's $12.5 billion, I would suspect the numbers aren't particularly great.
I think the numbers are great. I think when this deal started,
So do you
the
think
market
they
was
do
different.
$2 billion in revenue?
I mean, the revenue is less relevant than growth rate and are they profitable or not?
Do you guys use Figma?
What? Do I? I don't do anything.
I don't, but like all
So
of the
three of us
designers,
don't use Figma.
but all of the designers
And
that
I
I
use
work with,
Adobe. I use Adobe everything.
Oh, you're a big Adobe guy.
Yeah.
There you go.
all the designers, like in Silicon Valley, every company has a team of like 25 people that are working on Figma.
All right. Shout outs.
Shout outs.
Move on. All right. The first one is from Jason. Shout out to you guys for giving us the best fucking podcast in the world. I quit my job. Jesus.
Oh God.
From a toxic environment, and now I have an even better job.
Oh, great.
With more pay. Fuck yeah, boys. That's
Good.
incredible. Good
Congratulations,
for you, Jason.
Jason.
I got nervous when you said you quit your job.
Yeah.
From Sean. Shout out to my boy CC finishing his first year of freshman baseball with a 460 batting average.
Wow.
And a 1.65 ERA for the season. What is this guy, Shohei Ohtani? Love seeing your hard work this season and look forward to what's next. Love you, Dad. That's an insane stat. 460 batting average.
Freshman of college or high school? It didn't say.
It doesn't say, but whatever it is, that's an insane stat.
Did you see Otani's walk-off today?
No,
I did.
I mean,
This guy's incredible.
he's gambling all day. He's a gambler.
He's got some debts to, you gotta.
From Maria, a huge shout out to my husband, Sergio Roll. As I wrap up this school year, he has been very patient and loving. We had the privilege to sit in a few years ago while you recorded an episode. Oh, yeah, that's right. Congrats. And shout out Sergio. Last one from Ian Kalata. Shout out to my wife, Caroline Kalata, for truly being the best wife, partner, and mother while I battle and stage kidney disease. If anyone wants to be a living donor, I'm located in Orlando, Florida. My blood type is A positive. I have a young son, 3-year-old. Prayers are appreciated. All right. So Kathy's, Ian, we gotta help you out here. I don't know much about kidney disease, but it sounds like you need a kidney. So Ian, you need to give us more details on how to reach out to you if someone is blood type A positive and potentially in the location and has a kidney for you, a healthy kidney.
Yep.
Best of luck to you.
And give us more info. We're happy
give
to
us more info.
We're happy
Ian.
to talk about it.
Happy to help in any way. All right, Kathy's.
And shout out to me missing what seems like one of the most historic Game 7s of all time because I left the Wolves Nuggets down 20.
Shout out to me for always believing in Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan's son, who's the greatest basketball player for the next 10
I hope
years.
the Wolves win. They're my team now. For the
Our
rest
whole
of the
family has Wolves Anthony Edwards jerseys.
Dominic already has one?
Dominic has.
I would have gotten
Mikey
one.
got Dominic and Miles in New York. I'm sitting at my hotel. I'm not at my hotel yet. About to head to my hotel right before dinner. It's like 6 p.m. Mikey calls me and goes, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm staying in Midtown." He's like, "All right, I'm coming to your hotel. I got something for Dominic and Miles." He brings me 2 Anthony Edwards jerseys.
That's incredible.
All right, Kathy's, given what you know now, keep the information tight so it will not used against you.
Social credit score.
Yeah, keep your social credit score tight.
The social credit score that Zach's talking
The
about.
right move is to get off social media. Be a ghost.
Get off social media, get off all platforms.
And get off iPhone.
Yeah, all the crypto people, the real crypto people I know are all on Androids. I don't know if you noticed that, Zach.
Not only have I noticed that, the person that I know who needs the most encryption is this guy, Eric Prince, who used to run Blackwater. He started his own phone company because, so imagine what he knows. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's insane. All right, guys, enjoy the week.